You know Tinder has MMR? Yeah, it does. So here's a fun fact for you all on dating apps. Dating apps have MMR, and you might not think it, but they do. And the reason they have that is it is in their best interest to ensure that you see people that you could potentially match with. And so they'll check your successes and losses, and they'll adjust the people they show you based on your MMR. Fun fact. Source, I worked with a guy who used to work on dating app algorithms and things like that. My MMR in dating apps is very low, which is why I probably tend not to get matches. Another interesting thing about dating apps is they do a lot of things in regards to their MMR systems to manipulate you to keep using the apps. And so as an example, one of the things dating apps will do, which can be a little shady, but it keeps you using the app, is sometimes, as I mentioned, they have MMR. They'll show you people outside of your MMR and let you swipe on them. And regardless of what you swipe, they won't show you to that person. And the reason they're doing that is they're trying to keep you on the app. And so every once in a while they'll be like, hey, there's this person. And you'll be like, oh, well, maybe that person will like me. And then it doesn't matter if you swiped on them or not. They quite literally won't show you to the other person because they're like, this person's too low MMR. I'm not going to show them. And so they do some things. I think one thing that you always got to be careful of when you're looking at a lot of apps, this isn't just dating apps, this is games, this is all this different stuff, is a lot of apps are doing things under the hood to get you more engaged and more likely to stay there. And there's not a lot of transparency on it. And so you always have to be careful about the different dark patterns that things are doing under the hood to make you stay. A very classic scam that gambling websites used to do, like there used to be all these websites that did gambling with things like CSGO skins, is what they would do is they would give streamers who worked with them higher percent chance to win. And so you'd look at this streamer gambling on CSGO knives or whatever, and they'd win all these things, and you'd be like, oh my god, they won, therefore I'm going to win, and then you go gamble and lose all your money, right? And what was happening under the scenes is that the site was literally rigged to give these streamers who were working with them better odds, right? And so something you always have to be careful of when thinking about gambling sites or certain apps or lots and lots of different games is what are they doing that might be under the hood manipulating you to act in a certain way. And it's always something you have to be careful of. A really, really easy example of this, here, let's see. Here we go. I'm using this game, but there's a lot of games that do this. This is a game I've been playing recently. It's called 2 Dots, and it's fun. But one of the things they do, and again, I'm using this as an illustration because a lot of games do this, is they have this wheel of magical goods, and you spin it, and you get different rewards. And you notice there's this yellow section here, and this yellow section gives you the best reward, like 300 gold. Very, 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 very good reward. And you notice all these sections look the same. And if you played any of these games, you immediately are going to know that that's not true. If you played any of these games, you know that this yellow section has a much smaller percentage chance of hitting, right? But the reason they visualize it like this is, for starters, some people don't know that. Some people just are legitimately going to think that the reason they never hit the yellow section is because they're unlucky. And so one of the things but they visualize this like this to make you kind of think about the big reward and be like, oh yeah, it's the big reward. I'm going to get that eventually, right? And again, this isn't just 2 Dots. There's tons and tons of games that do this. But this is like a classic thing where under the hood, the actual chance to get this is not that big yellow wedge. It's more like this. That's like the actual chance compared to what they're showing you, right? And then the actual chance to get this bad reward, like say this reroll thing, is actually like this, right? And so that's going on with anytime you see a wheel of fortune in really just the majority of games, they're visually telling you falsehoods to, in your mind, mentally set up that the more valuable rewards are easier to get. This is also what these stacker games do. Where is it? These games, I mean, a lot of people know this, but you know these games you see at the store, Stacker, and it's got all these rewards, right? Including some like really good ones that are worth a lot of money, right? So when you play these, especially as a kid, you like think it's skill based. You're like, oh shoot, I just gotta stack the dots, and if I'm good enough, I can stack the dots to the top, and then I'll get the good prize, right? These things literally scam you. If you get to the top, these machines have a % chance to pay out. And if you get to the top and you're not on the % to pay out, it will just override your input. You'll correctly stop the stack, and then it'll be like, but he's not supposed to win right now, and it move you to the right or move you to the left. And so again, like whenever you're like looking at like a machine with like % chances in the background, they're gonna do a lot of things to like convince you these things are skill based and stuff. But in most cases, there's something going on with the programming in the background that ensures that you're not going to succeed in ways that visually you think you're going to. Be careful of that. I think League is forgiving to bad players. I kind of disagree, actually. I think League is incredibly hard to pick up if you're truly a bad player. I think League is like one of the harder games out there to learn, and it's very, very punishing if you don't know what you're doing. I think a lot of times the idea that League is forgiving to bad players comes from the idea that there's only certain legitimate ways to be good at the game, which I totally understand where that comes from. That's you're like saying it's like, hey, you can only be good at the game if you have insanely good mechanics, right? And it's like the thing I just want to push back on is, yes, there's certain types of ways of being bad at the game that just shouldn't reward you. And sometimes we do reward that, and that's bad. But something you have to always remember when thinking about a game like League that's so big is there's so many different ways to be good at it. And so you might say, oh, this person can play Warwick jungle and gank a lot and their mechanics suck, and therefore this is forgiving to bad players. My flip on that would be like, I think it's reasonable to say that one of the skills you could test in League of Legends is being really good at macro and ganking. And if you play Warwick and get to really high MMR on Warwick, you've just gotten really good at a different skill, and I think that's okay. And I think that ends up making the game better in the long term for everybody. And so yes, there's some degree of some players are just bad and they win anyways, and like maybe that's not good. But it is important that the game play to many different player types and many different potentials for skill expression. He Who Quacks, thanks for the 5 gift subs. Appreciate it. I think League should look at Dota's tutorial and make something similar, or we should have a similar client as they have in China where the abilities are shown in client with a guide. John Tar, so I'm not saying that you shouldn't do tutorials. We'll start with that. Don't clip this and be like, August says no tutorials. One of the things you have to account for when making your game is the fact that the vast majority of players either won't do the tutorial or won't literally learn anything from the tutorial or won't care about it. And they won't read tooltips either. And so one of the challenges that games like League of Legends and Dota experience, because a lot of people are like, the game is hard for new players, just make a tutorial, forehead, is games like League and Dota are so complex that just making a tutorial often doesn't cut it, and often doesn't count for the fact that a lot of players just aren't interested in really getting in there with a tutorial to begin with. And so, while tutorials definitely have value and definitely are important, there's also some degree of design you have to do around the games the new players are experiencing such that they can learn the game in effective ways. Because just reading the abilities will not help you really learn the game. And just playing the tutorial will not really help you really truly understand what it means to CS or roam or use your abilities, things like that. And so, while tutorials can help, I don't think like tutorials are the solve for how you get a new player to have a good time in an environment where they can effectively learn the game.